Okay, so Mark Gurman just released a massive report with everything that Apple will be launching over the next few months. And he claims that Apple will be embarking on one of the most ambitious periods of new products in their history, and that this will be between fall 2022 and the first half of 2023. So there's a lot of updates on the products that we already expected and some brand new products as well. Okay, so first of all, we have the iPhone 14, and we do have a new leak here, essentially confirming that the always-on display would be based on the iOS 16's widgets. That was mostly an assumption up until now. And not only that, but apparently there will be a setting to keep the sensitive data hidden, just like you can on the Apple Watch. Now, Mark hasn't said anything about notifications also being visible on the always-on display, but I think it would be weird for them not to. And then he once again confirmed the Pro-only features that we've heard about before. The Pro models are codenamed D73 and D74. And we're expecting to see a much improved front-facing camera with autofocus, which was rumored before, and a larger aperture than that 48 megapixel camera on the back, the biggest change since, well, the iPhone 6S really. We also have thinner bezels, which was a possibility, but again, now this is confirmed. The A16 chip, which once again, the Pro models will have, but the non-Pro models will be sticking to the A15. And of course, that pill-shaped cutout, which would also be only on the Pro models. They will all still be using Lightning. USB-C is only coming in 2023. Mark Gurman has reiterated on this. And yeah, overall, the non-Pro models are extremely disappointing this year. Now, onto the Apple Watch. There are some weird things here. So Mark claims that the Apple Watch S8 chip won't actually be a new chip like we've heard before, but instead it would be a repackaged S7, which was a repackaged S6. And he also stated that the major chip change would only be coming in 2023 with the S9 chip. Apparently the SE2, which is also coming alongside the Series 8, that one would also get the Apple Watch S8 chip, which is interesting. Although this is technically the S6, which is getting bumped from the S5, which is what the SE currently has now. So on paper, it might seem like a huge upgrade, but in reality, it's actually not. Mark also stated that the design is remaining unchanged, and even the screen. So that means that unfortunately, we would not be seeing an always-on display, which means that this would still be a unique feature to the Series 8. The rugged version is still coming. Mark has reconfirmed this. And the Series 3 is finally being discontinued. I do find it odd how Apple's still selling the Series 3 today, even though it does not support watchOS 9. Oh, and remember that low power mode that we were expecting to see at WWDC and watchOS 9? Well, apparently that is still coming, but it is actually a hardware exclusive feature, which is really weird. The whole idea for this low power mode is that you can still use your Apple Watch as you would normally, but it would just last you for longer instead of the current low power mode, which basically disables everything except for the clock. So I think the only way they could do it hardware-wise, since the chip is not changing, is via a co-processor. So maybe we will be seeing that, a new low-power chip that would work in combination with the main processor. Mark hasn't mentioned anything about that temperature sensor that we have seen leaked before. And now onto the iPads. So the 10th gen entry-level iPad, according to Mark, is getting the A14, 5G, and USB-C. Now, this isn't anything new. We've heard about these from 9 to 5 Max reports. We even made a video on this. But now we have another source, Mark Gurman, which is super trusted, that has also reported the exact same thing. He hasn't mentioned anything about the design change or even the display size change, which Russ Young has reported that is going up from 10.2 to 10.5 inches. So this would make me think that it's actually keeping the same design, but it's adding USB-C, although I'm not exactly sure what would happen with the Apple Pencil in that case, because the Apple Pencil, the first gen, is still Lightning. Other than that, the 11 and 12.9 inch M2 models of the iPad Pro are coming by the end of this year. He hasn't said anything about the redesign or MagSafe, which he has in the previous report. So we don't actually have any recent updates on those now, but we are still expecting to see some small design changes, at least the bezel is getting smaller, and also MagSafe still coming. Mark also stated that Stage Manager at the moment is just a preview of what is to come to the iPad Pros. So maybe this means that Apple's working on a better version that we will be seeing one day, maybe with the next version of iPadOS, in the iPad Pros. And he also reiterated the idea that Apple is indeed working on larger screen iPads, 14 or even 15 inches. The previous one that got leaked was 14.2, so I guess right in between. And Mark said that this will come out in 2023 or 2024. Right, speaking of the M2 chip, let's talk about the Macs. So Mark claimed in this report that there is the M2 Mac Mini coming, which again, we already knew, but it's coming by the end of the year. He hasn't said anything about updates on the design, so maybe Apple's gonna keep the same design in the end. And he also reiterated the idea of an M2 Pro Mac Mini. So something in between the M2 Mac Mini and the Mac Studio in terms of both price and performance. And I honestly think that's gonna be a great product. Like if you need the GPU performance of the M1 Pro right now, you have to pay $2,000. Now, according to a fresh new report that just came out from DigiTimes, the M2 Pro and the M3 chips would be based on a new 3nm process, which means that the performance improvements from the M2 to the M2 Pro might be greater than what we saw from the M1 to the M1 Pro. Mark then reported that the M2 Pro and the M2 Max chips will be found inside the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pros, which are also coming by the end of this year. I'm personally really happy in terms of the performance of my 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pros, so I won't be upgrading, that's for sure, but for people who are just buying a new MacBook Pro right now, I think those are going to be some great upgrades. Mark also talked about the Mac Pro, which is getting the M2 Ultra, and the M2 Extreme chip, so two different options, and this is the first time we've heard about the Mac Pro chip being labeled M2. And also M2 Extreme, we've heard that name presumed before, but it's looking like we might actually see this in Apple's naming scheme. The M3 chip is coming in 2023, and the 13-inch MacBook Air would be updated with the M3 first, and then there's also that new 15-inch MacBook Air coming, which will also have the M3 chip. Mark also stated that the 12-inch MacBook is still in development. He hasn't really said anything more about that yet. If you want to check out our video about everything we know in terms of it, check it out right here. He also stated that there's a new iMac coming with this new M3 chip, but it wasn't clear if this is a new 24-inch model or something bigger. I would say likely the 24-inch updated, as Mark has mentioned, no updates to this getting the M2 chip, so I think it's just going to jump in that case from the M1 straight to the M3. He then briefly talked about the AirPods Pro 2, which are getting an updated chip and support for higher quality audio, but I don't know if you guys have noticed, there's a big leak that actually came out just a few days ago, and we made a huge video on that with every single detail that we know about the AirPods Pro 2, so definitely check that video out after you finished this one. And then Mark also talked about some unexpected products that we haven't really heard about before. So there's a new HomePod coming, which apparently will be similar to the original HomePod in size, design, and overall sound quality. The chip will be the S8 chip, so the same one as in the Apple Watch Series 8. Now, the original HomePod had the Apple A8 chip, so the same one as in the iPad Air 2. Now, the A8 is older, but overall it is far more powerful than the Apple Watch S8 chip. Now, the S8 is of course much cheaper to manufacture, and realistically, the HomePod doesn't need that much performance after all. It's just a speaker. So if the Apple Watch can run Siri and Maps and all of that, then that chip is good enough for the HomePod. And apparently, it's also getting an updated top display with multi-touch functionality, which is cool, I guess. Now, Michiko also reported on this too, that a new HomePod is coming in the fourth quarter of 2022 or the first quarter of 2023. But will it succeed? The original HomePod failed miserably because of its high price and just not being smart enough. Well, the HomePod Mini is, it's still not smart enough, but it is quite cheap. It's $100 compared to $350, which was what the original HomePod used to cost. So I think that if Apple prices this new HomePod at $200 max, I think that they could still make some sales, but anything more than that, I think it's gonna fail in that case, just as miserably as the original HomePod did. And then we also have a brand new Apple TV that's coming by the end of the year, apparently, with the Apple A14 chip from the A12, and then also 4 GB of RAM instead of 3, and that's because all A14 devices have had 4 GB. But I think the most exciting update was in terms of the mixed reality headset. So according to Mark, this would come with the M2 chip and 16 GB of RAM, which is very impressive in terms of its overall GPU performance. This would make it the world's most powerful standalone VR headset. The Quest 2, for example, as you probably know, has a very immersive experience, but that one has 1.2 teraflops. The M2 has 3.6. So Apple's VR headset would be significantly more powerful. Of course, it would have to drive much higher resolution displays, but at the same time, the experience would be far more AR focused, than on the Quest, which are mostly all of them, they're VR focused. So I do think that Apple can really achieve something magical here. This is rumored for the first half of 2023 for the reveal, and I think that the launch would be at WWDC 2023. The developers need to, start making some apps for them, so they need to be made aware of the dev kits and everything. So that's what I think. A preview, just like the iPhone, in January, and then WWDC launch in 2023. But yeah, what product are you excited for the most? It's definitely the Apple Mixed Reality headset in my case. I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.